Hello, I am going to see Jujutsu Kaisen Execution tonight, and I figured that I would talk a little bit about, what I think I'm gonna think of the movie while I get ready to go see the movie. So Execution combines the ending, I think, of the Shibuya incident, or like the end of season 2. It's not the ending of the Shibuya incident, but like the Shibuya incident with the beginning of the next season, the Culling Games, and I'm so excited to get to see not only the Shibuya incident on the big screen, but to get to see like the Culling Games there too, like Yuta versus Yuji. Ugh, that's gonna be amazing. And so I just wanted to talk about what I am the most excited for before I see the movie. Some thoughts. First of all, I think I'm gonna cry all over again over Shibuya just because it's Shibuya. It's so sad. Shibuya was definitely a hard arc for me to get through personally. I mean, they put our boy Yuji through so much. But I also think like with the surround sound, JJK has phenomenal music, especially if they show the Chozo versus Kinjaku part. The music there, that's gonna kill me. That's gonna be so good. And I've been trying to catch up with the manga because I started reading the manga after I watched season 1 and after I watched some video essays on it. I love JJK so much and I'm having so much fun, watching it as it comes out and seeing what they do differently in the anime versus what they did with the manga. But yeah, super excited to see all the chaos that's going to come with the Culling Games and how they're going to have all that playing out on the big screen. I'm also really excited for Naoya Zenin's intro. And I don't know much about him other than that he's a really bad dude because I haven't gotten there in the manga yet. So like I'm really excited to see this villain in action, this terrible character. I think that I'm so hyped because Shibuya was such a great arc. Like it was so good to watch. Right now in the manga, I'm on volume 8, so we're getting into hidden inventory. And I've heard that the Culling Games is also really, really good. I know a lot of people have problems with the Shinjuku Showdown and with the stuff that happened there at the end of the manga, but I always hear good things about Culling Games and about Shibuya. So I knew when I was watching Shibuya it was going to be good, and it exceeded my expectations. So I'm really, really holding out hope for Culling Games, and I've been so excited for it for so long. So I absolutely cannot wait to get a taste of it. I wonder where it's going to end though, because I can't wait for that conversation between Yuji and Megami. I think I saw something on TikTok where it does happen. I'm so excited for that. I'm like ecstatic in ways I cannot describe. So I'll get back to you after I watch the movie. It is now the morning after I watched JJK Execution. It is 7:54. I've been up since 7:30. I would have filmed this last night, but I did not get home till 2:30 a.m. So when I got home, took off my makeup and hopped in bed since I was wearing pajamas anyways. So just want to give a warning. There will be spoilers if you haven't seen the Shibuya incident or Execution. Don't watch this. So I'm going to start by saying that I loved it. I loved Execution. I thought it was great. I thought it was a wonderful movie. I do not think it is for everyone, though. I think it's for a very specific group of people, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. If you see me looking at my phone, it's because I took notes on my phone. Some general things. The fights were sick. They were animated very beautifully, as always with Mappa. Had this flow to them, especially the Naoya and Chozo fight. And then getting to see everything with the surround sound was such an immersive experience. I mean, I've always said I would pay good money to watch the Shibuya incident, like all of it, in theaters with the surround sound. And I also love that they added stuff in there. So during the Shibuya incident, they added in like underlying songs throughout the incident and throughout the, what I'm gonna call a montage that was the Shibuya incident. I think they played all of Specials, all of More Than Words. There's a couple other songs I can't remember off the top of my head, but those are what played for the most part underneath what was going on. And I really liked that because it was done at very pivotal moments, very important moments, and it added to the story and it made it super cool, especially considering what they did with Shibuya. So the Shibuya incident part of the movie was extremely short, actually way shorter than I expected, and I'm thinking about it now, I don't know why I expected it to be any longer than this. I wouldn't have even called it a compilation, it was just a montage. Like when I went and saw Hidden Inventory Premature Death, it felt like a compilation. It felt like they took all of those episodes and turned it into one big movie to tell one big story. It didn't so much feel like that's what was happening with Execution, mainly because of the way the Shibuya incident was handled. It really was just a montage of things that happened, and it didn't feel for a really long time in there, or maybe it just felt like a really long time to me. I think it may be the first 15 minutes of the movie, and like that's it, then we get the culling games. But it just felt so long and like so much, but it also felt like so little because we never stopped to breathe. Sukuna's fight with Maharaga was sick. Like, they didn't necessarily take their time with it, but that's such an escalated scene. They showed a lot of it. I don't think we ever stopped to breathe until we got Todo's entrance into Shibuya where he's talking to Yuji. We did stop to breathe, and more than words started playing during that section, and I think that that was perfect. But that's really the only time we stopped to breathe for Shibuya. We kind of got breathers when Nanami and Nobara died. But it was just a lot. It was, again, it was like a montage of like the highlights of Shibuya. Now let's talk about the culling games, which is what I'm super excited for and what I was so excited to see. First of all, Naoya Zenin's voice actor? I had to look it up. It's Alan Lee that does it. And I know that Alan Lee has been in a couple of projects. I don't know if he's been anything big. He was amazing. I loved his portrayal of Naoya. I don't know much about Naoya. I haven't finished the manga. I've gone and I've read panels that like I'm excited about. Like I've read Yuji's Domain, and I've read Yuji's conversation with Megami after he's revived and stuff like that. I've watched a lot of video essays on the topic. So I know what happens. I just haven't like in-depth read it. That's why I'm reading it right now, and I always like mention that. Things I say about the manga might not necessarily, be accurate, or they might be different after I finish reading it. But from what I know about Naoya's VA, he was chef's kiss. So good. How do I say this without sounding bad? He played a raging misogynist very well. I don't think liked is the right word, but I think it was very fitting for the character, the disgust with which he discussed Maki and her strength and the way he spoke about women. I think that that was very fitting for Naoya, and I think that Alan Lee did a very good job with that, so I'm very pleased with Naoya's portrayal. Now, the main fights that we got were Yuji versus Yuta and Naoya versus Chozo. Now, I theorize that they cut parts of both fights, but it felt like Naoya versus Chozo was far longer, far more intense, and we got far more attention on it. And don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining about that. I loved that fight. We learn a lot about Chozo's character in that fight. We learn a lot about Naoya in that fight. And maybe Yuta versus Yuji was never meant to be a long fight. Maybe it was always meant to be super short because of how powerful Yuta is. But I don't know, I wished it had been a little bit longer, and I theorize that maybe they cut parts out of it that they're gonna put in when they release the actual season. I don't know. That was my only complaint. I wished Yuji versus Yuta was longer, but other than that, it's great. When Yuta comes dragging Yuji in, and then whenever Yuji wakes up and he just goes, I'm so glad it worked. I just loved it. I loved that. I mentioned earlier that I've read certain parts of the manga that are like way ahead. One of the things that I mentioned I've read is the conversation between Yuji and Megami, where Megami tells him like, start by saving me. When I saw that animated, Megami holding Yuji's wrist, Megami encouraging him, the way in which he talks to him. I know that I heard that the VA, at least in the Japanese, was told to do the start by saving me with urgency really heavily because of Sumiki. But I don't know, I just thought it was a really, really beautiful thing that Megami was the one hunting for Yuji. Megami was the one going out to rescue him, to save him. Because Megami has saved him from the beginning, and I love their friendship. I thought it was such a like beautiful moment, a beautiful parallel again, where Megami is like, this is my friend. I brought him into this world of jujutsu. Like, he ate that finger to save me, and it's caused him all this pain. I have to do something to help him. At least that's how I've always interpreted it. And no, Megami genuinely does need Yuji's help. He really does need him for like Sumiki and stuff like that, for the culling games. But realistically, I genuinely think Megami could like do it on his own or do it with another sorcerer. I think a lot of it has to do with his love for Yuji as his friend and his care for him and this very close bond that they have. I love their relationship, and I think that that scene really encapsulates the way they view each other very well. Like, Yuji keeps talking about how you know, Sukuna is planning something with Fushiguro, and if I'm around, you're only going to get hurt. I don't know, I loved that scene. There are a lot of scenes between Yuji and Megumi that I sit there and I look at and I think, wow, that's a beautiful depiction of love. Maybe not necessarily romantic, but platonic. Whenever I'm annotating JJK, because I annotate the manga, I always have a tab dedicated to love. Love is a huge theme throughout JJK Zero, and I think love is actually a huge theme throughout all of JJK. Because love doesn't have to be romantic, love can be platonic, it can be familial. And so I'm always annotating it, I'm always looking for it, and I find a lot of the love that I'm finding is like between Yuji, Megumi, and Nobara, all for each other. Also, Chozo was so funny. Two moments in particular I can remember. I laughed a couple times. There were two moments I found comedic. First is Megumi and Yuji are having this very intense discussion. They're talking about, you know, Nobara is not doing well or dead as far as they're concerned. Megumi needs Yuji to help him with his sister, and they're talking about Tengen's barriers or something. This is the two of them. There's nothing in the middle, it's darkness, and Choso just appears out of the darkness, and they're like, where did he come from? Was he there the whole time? Second comical section of the movie that I just loved, when everyone's asking, who are you, to Choso, and Yuji goes, I guess for now, just think of him as my older brother. And Choso goes, Yuji! Like, so emotionally. I don't know, it's so funny. Okay, next I want to talk about the Jin and Kaori scene where we meet Yuji's parents and we have his grandfather talking about, he's like, I know all you wanted was to have a family with Kaori, but like she died, and then she walks into the room and we see the stitches on her forehead representing the fact that that's not Kaori anymore, that's Kenjaku. I don't know if it's like this in the manga because I haven't read it, but we're watching it through Yuji's eyes. We're watching it through baby Yuji's perspective. And, you know, Jin says this in the manga, and I'm paraphrasing, he says it in the anime as well. He tells Yuji's grandfather, don't talk that way in front of Yuji. Babies remember a lot more than we think they do. And it's Yuji's grandpa saying, you're gonna die if you stay with her, Jin. And we are seeing this from Yuji's perspective. We're seeing Yuji look at his mother, Yuji look at his father, Yuji look at his grandfather, Yuji hear all these things as an infant, and then Yuji wakes up. And so I'm wondering, maybe are they gonna add something into the anime that wasn't in the manga, where Yuji learns more about his parents and actually cares to know something about them? Is that going to be incorporated here? Because I remember when I learned that he doesn't really learn much about his parents or about, you know, his past, feeling like that was such a missed opportunity. And I'm not the only one who thought that. I mean, it didn't need to be a centerpiece or a focal point, but like, you drop a bomb and then just run away from it. It's kind of crazy. It feels almost like that was supposed to be something, but then either it got forgotten about or it just didn't end up working out for like budgeting or timing reasons. I have no idea, but I'm hoping they're adding that into the anime and maybe expand upon Yuji's history and his knowledge of his parents, because I think that could show us a really cool side of this character that we haven't seen yet, and it could be a really cool moment for character development and also for some like plot development. Then we get to the scene where they're going to see Tengen, and Yuji asks about Riko's bloodstains. And Yuki goes, oh, those are from like, I think it was 17 years ago. And that's when everything started to fall apart. A lot of people talk about how prequel arcs sometimes aren't necessary, sometimes you don't need them. Hidden Inventory really did show the catalyst for everything that happens. Because if Suguru Geto never defects, then we never have the Night Parade of 1,000 Curses, and Satoru Gojo never kills Suguru Geto but doesn't dispose of his body, and then Kenjaku never gets his body, and maybe all the events of JJK never happen. You know, in some way, Kenjaku had been planning the Culling Games, and you know, I think they might have happened differently. I think it's really interesting how Riko's death and Geto's decision to defect from Jujutsu Society is like the catalyst for this entire show, specifically Riko's death being the catalyst. Because, well, yes, she was a star plasma vessel, she was also just a little girl. She was 14, 15 years old. And also, they were never going to make her be the star plasma vessel. They were planning to do what they could to protect her and to let her live her life. This really solidified for me that, like, that moment was the turning point. That was the catalyst for the events that happen in Jujutsu Kaisen. And my last piece of notes from that was that meeting Tengen at the end gave me chills. Whoever voiced Tengen, and I don't know if they put an effect on this individual's voice, great job. I loved it. I love how like everything was white. They're all outlined in red. I can't wait to see more of that. And I also like how Yuki's like, not everyone's being rejected. But those were my thoughts on all of those. And now, something I want to say overall about the movie. When I went and watched the Hidden Inventory Premature Death movie, it was very clear that there was a story being told. It followed a story from start to finish. It followed the story of the prequel arc. Both times I've seen JJK in movie theaters, I brought the same friend who does not watch JJK. And I remember after Hidden Inventory Premature Death, he was like, oh, I was a little confused with the ending of Premature Death. He was like, it just didn't feel like a good movie. But at the very least, it had a storyline. It had a plot line that even if you didn't have context, you could understand. And any context he did need, I just leaned over and gave him during the movie, and I told him this time that I was going to do the same thing. You need context, I'll lean over, I'll give you that context. I remember when we got out of this movie, and I want to talk about what he said or what was mentioned when we got out of this movie first, because it's important. This movie is not a good standalone movie. If you have not seen JJK and you don't want to be confused, don't go see this movie. Because I was expecting the Shibuya incident to be like an actual compilation of the Shibuya incident, you know, retelling the story. I was talking to him about it beforehand. I was really excited to see how they were going to tell that full story, what they were going to cut and what they were going to keep, so that it made sense to viewers. I don't think they cared about that. Like, I was sitting there watching the movie, and at multiple points within, I think, the first 5 minutes it's playing, I'm leaning over to try to give him context, and I'm like, I can't. It would take too long. There was too much context to give. This wasn't like Hidden Inventory and Premature Death where I only had to give context in a couple of different places. I would have had to give so much context for him to understand specifically what was happening in Shibuya. And then because he didn't understand Shibuya, he understood like stuff from Hidden Inventory and Premature Death. So when it started with Gojo and Gojo being sealed, he understood what was happening there, but he just got a little more confused as time went on, and I can't really blame him. And you know, I don't think this movie was meant to be a standalone movie, really. I don't think they really cared about that. I think this really was just made for JJK fans, which is great and wonderful. I just want to make sure that I state that if this is your introduction into JJK, it's not going to be a good one. Maybe it will be because you'll think the fight scenes are cool, but I personally think that if you were going to go see a movie, I think even Hidden Inventory Premature Death would have been a good movie to start with. But like JJK Zero, if you want to start with one of the movies, I really would recommend JJK Zero or Hidden Inventory Premature Death if you can find it somewhere online. Anyways, those are my thoughts. I am an avid and huge JJK fan, and I absolutely cannot wait for the Culling Games and Season 3 to start coming out in January. Bye.